Good morning and welcome to another episode of Tabernacle's Health Nugget. We thank you so much for joining us. I know we've been having some exciting times here at our church with these different health exercises. This morning, I have with me a lady that I love a lot and respect highly, Mrs. Marlene Jairam, a social worker, and she's my sister in Jesus Christ, and I thank God for her. During the usual lifestyle of a person, we all go through periods of loneliness. And for some people, it can present as a significant mental health challenge as time goes by. So this morning, we want to focus on mental health and one of the big issues, namely loneliness. In our culture, people are usually lonely, especially around the holiday seasons. But with the advent of the COVID pandemic, this syndrome has seemingly increased exponentially. I heard on the news this week a story of a weather reporter in Texas who lost her son and her father to death. The son from suicide and the father from a chronic illness. And allegedly reportedly, she became extremely lonely. And as a consequence, she ultimately ended her life with suicide. It was very, very painful for all the folk who worked with her, and it's a significant challenge. So even though we may not feel that loneliness is a significant problem at the outset, we know that it can have significant pathological complications. So this morning, I'm going to ask Marlene to work with me on this. So Marlene, can you tell us a little bit about loneliness, or what kinds of loneliness, how it evolves in a person's life?
Okay, so first of all, I want people to understand that loneliness is defined as sadness, or it could lead into depression. However, loneliness, you can be in a crowd of people and still feel lonely, and you could be alone and not feel lonely. So there's like 7 different types of loneliness. So I'm just going to touch on those real quick before we go in depth into the conversation. So you have a new situation, whether you move to a new town, a new school, different things like that. So that's the first type of loneliness. Then you have what is called I'm different. Maybe you're of a different culture than where you are. And the people around you don't relate to them. So that's different.
I felt that when I went to medical school.
Yes. And then you have one where it's called no sweetheart, which means they don't have an intimate relationship with anyone. So there's no real close connection that they have. And then you have no time for me. Now, no time for me is, let's say you have friends, and over the years, now your friends are probably married, you're not, they're having babies, you don't, so they're busy doing other things, and you're kind of out there, so you feel alone. You feel like no one has time for you. And you also have the unworthy friend. So I guess if somebody betrays your trust, so you feel like you're isolated, that you can't trust anyone else. You also have a quiet presence, which means you're sociable, you have a lot of people, you hang out, you come to church, you're well known in church, but when you get home, you don't have anyone there. And then the last one we have is loneliness of animals. And a lot of people, especially in our culture, would be like, loneliness of animals. Yes, loneliness of animals, especially for the elderly. A lot of them rely on animals as company. So those are 7 different types of loneliness. So it's important to know what type of loneliness you're dealing with in order to address the situation.
Okay. Well, I know we're going to come back with a part 2 on this sometime later, so we're going to explore those things a little bit more when we come back. But this morning, I want us to focus more on how do we cope with this syndrome. I am putting the cart, as it were, before the horse. I'm putting the treatment before we do the diagnosis,
okay.
which is not typical of me. But just because of the rampant problem that we see in our culture, that's the reason why I'm putting the cart first, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of the other issues. So you mentioned that there are these 7 different kinds of loneliness. How do we go about as we're coping with the challenges of loneliness as they come up in our lives?
Okay, so let's deal with the situation that we're in now with COVID-19. So we know that we have what we call social distancing, which I prefer if we start using physical distancing. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you can still support someone socially while staying physically distant. And if you realize, like a lot of grandparents or loved ones who are away, you use the internet, you could use different media devices in order to connect with that person. So that's very important during this time, to still keep that connection with your loved ones.
Okay, could you go into a little bit more detail as to how we do that? You know, for instance, I know you were telling me about some of the different studies and opportunities that people have to cope with it, and I have also been watching how we need to support people, especially the elderly. How can we go about rendering that kind of support and teaching them how to support themselves, right, as we teach them how to combat the lonely situations that may come up in their lives?
Right. Okay, so one of the things that I want to bring to your attention, like in the state of Massachusetts, in Maryland, their aging and adult program, they actually decided to have the elderly, whoever wanted to volunteer, to sign up. And when they signed up for a program, what would happen is that they would have someone contact them at least once a week, just to give them a personal message, to say a hello.
Great idea.
Exactly. So that way you have that connection still going. And it was on a volunteer basis. And so that was a way that they combated some of the loneliness that people were feeling and isolation.
Do you think we could implement something at our church? What would that look like?
Actually, you know what? I think it's an excellent idea, and I must give hats off to Lanaka and Gigi, our AYM leaders, because they have actually taken up this mantle. I know a couple of weeks ago, Dr. McCullough and myself did a topic on depression, and we were addressing one of the universities where they started connecting college students with senior citizens. And I think that sparked an interest in them, and it's something that they're actually looking into doing at Tabernacle. And if you have any other viewers out there, they might be from another church, another state, that's a program that I think would be a wonderful idea, where you connect with the elderly. And it's not just for the elderly, because it helps the young people as well. Statistically, you know, with loneliness, we usually think the elderly as being the high population, but it's actually the age group from 16 to 24 who are the loneliest. Exactly. And we usually think the opposite. I was surprised also by the study. And the reason being is because a lot of them have friends online. They don't have physical friends, so they don't have that connection. Whereas the older ones, you know, we didn't have social media, so we are accustomed connecting face to face and doing those things.
And we know that suicide is one of the really high causes of death in young people in that age range. And also they adopt some mistaken behavior that sometimes endanger their lives. And one can see why loneliness may contribute to that. You also said, I remember you were talking about how we can combat this loneliness thing by living better, and because it causes so much stress in our lives.
It does.
And so how do we reduce the stress so that we don't feel that lonely?
Well, before we go into that, I want to leave you with a couple of numbers, because you talked about suicide, and like we know, loneliness could lead to depression. Depression could lead to suicidal ideations, which could lead to death by suicide. So if you are feeling lonely, there's you can text HOME, the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741. And that's just to talk to someone, okay? So,
Good information.
yeah, so just text the number, just text the word HOME, and you text it to 741-741. And someone will reach out to you, you'll be able to talk to someone. September is actually Suicide Awareness Month, Suicide Prevention Month.
It's also Prostate Cancer Month too, but
Yes. So with that being said, if you do feel suicidal ideations or you know someone who's having it, please contact 1-800-273-8255. Now, those two are two important numbers. I think everyone could keep with them, share it, especially during this time. The Adventist message, we do the New Start. And that's basically nutrition, sunlight, exercise, rest, all of those good things. And those are all ways to combat loneliness. It's ways to combat depression. And it's just getting out there, eating a proper diet, things like that will help anyone in that situation to start coming out of that state.
Because I remember you said here that we need to get enough sleep, and a lot of us, especially young people, especially in college studying, you don't get enough sleep, and that may really hinder the ability to huddle with other people. I also read a place where someone said that it's good to have pets. And the reason why I brought this up is because some of the elderly people may not be able to get out, especially in this COVID time. But having those, they call them comfort animals or something?
Comfort animals,
Talk to us a little bit about it.
And it's so true, and that's one of the stages, one of the types of loneliness that I talked about with the animals. It is so important, especially for the elderly, even for little children. I know when we are dealing with grief, a lot of times we have Tomorrow's Rainbow, which I refer a lot of families to, and that's with little ponies and horses, because there's a different type of connection that you have with animals than you do with people. And that connection can help and subside some of the loneliness feelings that people are faced with as well.
So my pet teddy bear from when I was 5 years old.
Well, I don't know about a pet teddy bear, maybe a dog or something. Would help, yes. So those are some of the things that we're looking at as well.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting idea to help people have something to hold on to, something that that will love them unconditionally, and that they can love back in return. And the dog or pet is not going to talk back to them and slap them or abuse them or anything like that. And it really leads to having really great company. As far as the exercise thing, I know that we can't exercise in groups anymore, so because of the COVID restrictions. So how about those TV kinds of things that they have where I'm not.
Well, you know what? You can't do it in groups as far as physically, or you can. You just have to space it out. So let's say if you go to a park and it's 6 of you, you can have enough social distancing where you're able to do that. One thing, though, they're saying if you are exercising and you have a mask on, not to do it like how you would like an hour or so. You need to do it in increments because you don't want to exert yourself either. So you also have where you have classes online that you could participate, or you could invite a friend to exercise with you at a certain time. So people are being creative, and it seems to be working out.
Yeah, because I want to learn how to do the moringa. But is it moringa, or moringa is the name of the thing that you drink?
Oh, you're trying to do moringa and salsa. Huh? Yes, now is a perfect time.
Join a exercise group to do that. And people were also mentioning about studying a new language and meeting a group that studies a new language. Like if you want to learn Spanish, you could join a Spanish group or whatever. And those kinds of educational kind of activities may help to not make you feel so lonely, because you're involved with, even if it's on the computer, you're involved with somebody or something that may help you to not be lonely.
So what we've been telling a lot of people is to pick up a hobby, find some new career path or anything like that, because once your mind, you have to keep your mind active. One of the things with loneliness is that you start losing your cognitive abilities. You're a doctor, you know. And so some of those skills that you would use to make decision making and different things like that, you're lacking those skills. But if you are keeping your mind busy as far as doing a hobby, picking up a skill, learning a new language, those are different ways that you can combat not just loneliness, but you can advance yourself as well.
Right. Well, I noticed that we haven't really exhausted all the things we can do from the list that you have for me here, the things that we can do to cope with loneliness. And I hope that we can come back another time and discuss some more of these things. But I think we've given our audience some things that they can do. And if they wanted to find a little bit more of mechanisms to cope, can they can contact us here at Tabernacle? You'll be happy to help them?
Well, you know what? At Tabernacle, we have so many wonderful professionals. It's funny because I was just thinking in my head, we have Dr. McCullough, both McCulloughs. We have Dr. Walker, Joanne, Valerie, Natasha, who else have I forgotten? Lanaka. We have so many mental health professionals, as well as physicians and different ones, nutritionists, Michelle, Holly, you know, different people who have been given some very helpful nuggets, including Jude, who I know did last week as well. And I really think that at Tabernacle, we're truly blessed, and we should be tapping into our resources. So I want to commend the ones who have been doing it, and definitely you could reach out to us. We still have, I believe, on our website, the resources that we listed previously as well.
Amen. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have been talking this morning to one of my favorite people, Ms. Marlene Jairam, and we have gotten information as to how we can cope. We haven't exhausted the information. As I said, we'll be back in a little while to talk some more about this. And next time we'll probably talk about some of the things to help prevent a person becoming lonely in the first place. We'll do some diagnostic things before we put the cart before the horse. But we wanted you to find something to do now while you're at home and you may be feeling lonely. There are multiple things that you can do to avoid that state. And I hope and pray that as you listen to us this morning, that you will take advantage of the opportunities that we have, and you will not allow the situations of this life to get you down, and you'll be able to be a vibrant, supportive individual in this life, and above all, get ready to meet Jesus when he comes again. So again, I want to thank Sister Jairam, and hope they have a great Sabbath this morning.
Can I just add one little short tip?
Yeah, okay.
I know last week for the AYM, they did the painting.
I thought that was great too. I was going to mention that.
Such an excellent program, because you know what? We are stressed because there's so much going on, and sometimes you just need to get away from that. And I just want to commend the ladies, Lanaka and Gigi, for the excellent program that they're doing, because we do need ways which we can unwind. So other churches, other places, companies, that's an excellent way to get your people to de-escalate some.
My grandson, Carter, painted the most beautiful sunset last week. I will bring it to church.
So you need to frame it.
Okay, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.